The letters on my computer screen ran together as if my brain couldn't accept them. Clear your desk by end of day, Holly. HR will address your paperwork. That was it. No call, no sit down. Just a brusque firing couched in corporate speak. 5 years. 5 years of investing every last bit of myself in Summit Edge Logistics, gone with a single email. And why? 3 days. 3 days I'd spent burying my father. 3 days of sanctioned bereavement leave. The rest of the message went on. In the same detached clinical tone, we need individuals who value their work. As if greeting my father's death was a holiday. As if sorrow was an egotistical whim, I sat back in my chair. The leather creaked in the still silence of dawn. Outside, the Boise sky was just starting to catch fire. I had come in early frantic, to get caught up after my brief absence, hungry, devoted, and this was my reward. My name is Holly Peterson. And until 2 minutes ago, I was the regional team lead of the top performing division in this company. I was 34 years old and had established not only a career, but a family. The little cactus my colleagues gave me for Christmas last year was perched on my desk. The photograph from our company outing framed, handwritten thank you cards from the individuals I had mentored. 5 years of toil, late nights, and triumph boiled down to a box of mementos. And written at the foot of my termination. Notice was a name that I knew all too well, Dan Weaver. My boss, the same guy who had signed off on my bereavement leave a week ago. Failure to maintain adequate presence during critical operational periods. My father's death, apparently, was poor timing. I didn't cry. I didn't slam my fists. Instead, I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo of the email, and sent it to my personal account, Evidence. Then I powered down my computer, stood, and began packing with deliberate calm. By the time my coworkers trickled in, half my desk was cleared. Tanya from accounting was the first to see me. Her voice shook. Holly, what's going on? I wrapped up the cactus in newspaper. I've been let go. Her eyes went wide. What? Why? I didn't blink. Apparently, going to my dad's funeral proves I'm not a workaholic. Shock gave way to outrage across her face. That's crazy. Paula needs to know about this. You can't just... I stopped her gently. No, I won't argue it. But I won't forget it either. My team arrived one by one. Jason, normally all jokes and smiles, was seething. This is rubbish. He snapped out. I quieted him with a small head shake. It's done. Dan made his choice. But you pushed the Newbrook merger, he protested. 18% profits are up thanks to you. I could only manage a sad smile. Not enough, apparently. By 9:30, all 7 of my core team surrounded me, Ethan's fists clenched, Veronica openly sobbing, the others standing in silent outrage. You can't leave us, Veronica pleaded. The Wilson renewal's next week. Hernandez shipping is still pending. You're the only one who... I taped the box shut with one firm strip. Dan should have thought of that before firing me for burying my father. The words hung heavy, like a thundercloud ready to burst. A harsh voice pierced the air. Everybody back to your desks. Dan Weaver stood there, arms folded, jaw clenched. His tone left no room for debate. Now. Grudgingly, my team broke up, each casting me a final searing glance. Dan moved in, his voice lowering. You could have handled this discreetly, Holly. At the end of the day, rather than making a scene, I stood my ground, unmoving. Like the discretion you used when you fired me by email. After I had been approved for leave, his jaw clenched, eyes flashing. Business. Priorities shift. Needs change. Your father's death was a shame, but my tone cut through his like a sword. Don't even think about finishing that sentence. For the first time ever, doubt crossed his face. He fussed with his tie, regaining control. HR is waiting. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I picked up my box, level and even. Oh, I won't. But hold on to this memory, Dan. You'll be sorry. The HR office was cold. White walls, cold air, and Barbara Kent's forced sympathy. She was new, only 6 months on. Even she seemed ill at ease. Sorry about all this, Holly, and your father. I nodded, shuffling through the pages. Standard termination, non-disparagement, a non-compete agreement barring me from work for 6 months. Barbara paused. May I ask, why did this occur? It appears sudden. I took out my phone, pushed it across her desk. Read it. Her eyes widened as she read the email. This is the actual notice of termination? No warnings? No performance review? Nothing, just an email. Her pen trembled slightly as she jotted a note. I need to check with legal. Excuse me. She slipped out, leaving me alone with the view. The Boise River stretched below, winding through the city. My father loved fishing there. We'd waded into its current together countless times, his voice calm as the water rushed past. He had also taught me patience. And where I was now, I knew patience was just what this revenge would take. The river moves, Holly girl, I remembered. My dad saying, his voice as steady as the current that lapped at our feet. But the rocks remain still. Be like the rocks. Those words rattled in my brain as Barbara came back 20 minutes later. Her face was meticulously neutral, but her smile too tightly. It spoke volumes. Nothing had changed. Nothing ever would. Clasped her hands together, her voice clinical. Unfortunately, Idaho is an at-will employment state. The company is within its rights to. I stopped her, my pen already signed across the dotted line. I get it. Summit Edge can do what it pleases, and so can I. She paused and her voice dropped, off the record. This is not right. If you wanted to take legal action, don't, I replied, my voice strong. I pushed the signed documents back. Across the desk. Thank you, Val. I walked out of the main office for the final time, knowing I had eyes on me. My team, my crew, stood silently behind their desks. Theirs were faces contorted in sorrow and anger, like funeral attendees. I smiled at them weakly, the last they would ever see as their leader. Outside, September air hugged me, unexpectedly warm. I stowed the box in my trunk, then settled behind the wheel, letting the gravity of the day settle. My phone vibrated. Again and again. Jason, this is wrong. What can we do? Veronica, are you okay? Can we meet later? Ethan, Dan's a spineless coward. The team's furious. More calls came in. Anger, devotion, love. These were not just coworkers, they were family. And in that instant, I realized Summit Edge had aired far more than terminating me. I backed out of the parking lot, a plan already set. The phone rang. I looked at caller ID and my lips twisted into the slightest grin. Hank Fleming, CEO of Vertex Transport Systems, Summit Edge's largest competitor, and a man who had been trying to hire me for months. It was time to call him back. Vertex Transport Systems was the antithesis of Summit Edge, radiant, airy, filled with synergy. Ground-to-ceiling windows gazed out over Boise, the city sparkling. In late afternoon sun. Hank Fleming greeted me at the entrance with a firm handshake. A stout, silver-bearded man with eyes as keen as cut glass. I've been waiting for your call, he said, ushering me into a conference room. Although not in these conditions. News spread quickly in our sector. He already knew I was out, but not why. I presented him with Dan's email. His demeanor blackened. That's not management. That's cruelty. Bereavement leave exists for a reason. I breathed out, bitter. Summit Edge has always valued profits over people. I just never thought I'd be on the chopping block myself. Hank leaned forward. Then let me be blunt, Holly. I want you at Vertex. We're growing in the Pacific Northwest. The division director. Position is yours if you want it. My heart skipped. Division director, I rung up. More power, more pay. More authority. But there was one hurdle left. My non-compete, I said tactfully. Hank's lips drew up in a sure smile. It's too broad. Probably. Unenforceable. And if they try to strong-arm it, our lawyers will bury them. You'll never shell out a dime? I nodded slowly. I'll consider it. Take the weekend, he said. We'll discuss details Monday. That night, I ran into Jason and Veronica at Riverfront Brewing, a small pub hidden away from downtown commotion. Safer. Here, less eyes. They slipped into the booth across from me, their expressions pinched with anger. How are you doing? Veronica asked softly. I'm fine, I replied, even though the words felt a little hollow. It's been a crappy couple weeks, but I'll pick myself up by the bootstraps. Jason snorted. Dan's an idiot. The office is already in disarray. Nobody can even locate the Henderson proposal files. And your system access? Locked up. I raised my glass with a small, knowing smile. Sounds like a damn problem. Veronica leaned in, her voice intense. It's more than that. People are angry. Not only our team, everyone. Holly, you are respected. If they'll do this to you, their best, what does that say about the rest of us? Jason nodded. Even Paul is questioning. The regional manager's shaken. I let their words sink in. Good. The cracks were already beginning to appear. My phone vibrated. Again, more messages. Tales of anarchy, bewilderment, outrage. Summit Edge was falling apart. Jason's eyes searched mine. So, what now? I hesitated, then said quietly, I have an offer from Vertex. They froze. Veronica spoke first. Your non-compete, those rarely hold up, especially when you're fired without cause. That's what Vertex's lawyers said, but it's still a risk. Jason's phone vibrated again. He glanced at it, scowled. Dan just called an emergency meeting. Tomorrow, Saturday. He's never done that before. Veronica's eyes narrowed. Wilson account reviews due Monday. Without Holly's analysis, they're blind. I took a sip of my drink, a spark of pleasure. Warming my chest. My files were on the company server, yes. But only I knew my system. To anyone else, it would be a maze with no way out. I placed my glass on the table, steady and calm. I really should be off. Early appointment tomorrow. Neither of them pushed me. They didn't have to, because they both understood. The river changes. But the rocks remained steadfast, and I was finished being swept away as I got up from the table in the pub. Jason's eyes met mine. Holly, if you were to go to Vertex, hypothetically speaking, would they be hiring? I hesitated, looking at him, then Veronica. Their faces said it all before I even responded. Hypothetically. Yes, they're growing fast. The glance they shared was charged, half hope, half rebellion. The seed had been planted. Saturday morning, I sat with Vincent Torres, an employment attorney whose office smelled of buffed wood, leather, and authority. Harvard and Stanford diplomas sparkled. On his wall, he pushed his glasses aside as he read through Dan's email. Textbook wrongful termination, he pronounced, voice cutting. Approved bereavement leave, then terminated. That's both a violation of contract and good faith. I don't want to sue, I interrupt. I just want to know my non-compete. Vincent read through the document, his brow furrowing. 6 months within 300 miles. That's not restrictive, that's exile. Courts here never enforce something so sweeping, particularly when the employer was in bad faith. So I could work for Vertex? He sat back, tapping his pen consideringly. Summit. Edge would have to demonstrate you're causing them quantifiable harm. Given they let you go, that's a losing case. Proceed with caution, but don't let this contract trap you. I departed his office lighter, the law now working in my favor. My phone rang nonstop all weekend with calls from my former team. The Saturday emergency meeting had been pandemonium. Dan, face red and yelling, was assigning my work to everyone else without pay. Wilson account files had been discovered, but no one could figure out my special analysis system. By Sunday evening, the choice was clear as day. Monday morning, I called Hank Fleming. He picked up on the first ring. Holly decided. Yes, I replied. I'll take it on one condition. Specify, he said. If my old team applies to Vertex, they receive fair shot. No politics. Pure opportunity. His deep laughter came over the phone. Deal. If they're half as smart as you are, we'd be idiots to turn them down. Later that day, I signed. Division Director, Pacific Northwest Operations, 40% more pay. Improved benefits. A sign-on bonus, emerging from Vertex's glass towers, the sun brighter, the city more razor-sharp, vibrant. My phone beeped again, 7 new messages. All from my previous team. They needed to meet. In private. Tuesday morning, a downtown cafe. With just a few tables. Corner table, quiet. They came one by one, Jason, then Veronica. Later, Ethan, Louise, Diane, Gabriella, and Kayla filled in. 2 tables pushed together. Ethan broke the silence, his voice rough. Summit Edge is collapsing. Dan's micromanaging us to death. Paula's breathing down his throat. Clients are questioning. The Wilson account is on the verge of leaving, Veronica continued darkly. They question why you were not working on their renewal. I took a sip of my coffee, hearing. The pleasure was keen, but I concealed it. Jason leaned forward. I hear. You signed on with Vertex. The group lapsed into silence, all eyes on me. News spreads quickly. I replied level-eyed. Veronica spoke for them all. We want to go with you. I studied their faces. You all have employment at Summit Edge, stable jobs. Are you prepared to jeopardize that? Lucy laughed gallingly. Safe? They fired you for attending your father's funeral? We're none of us safe. Vertex is recruiting, I said warily. I can't guarantee anything. You'd need to apply officially. Gabriella pulled out papers from her bag. Confirmation emails. We already did, all of us, yesterday. I blinked, shocked. You applied before even discussing this with me? Kayla's tone was firm. We trust you, Holly. Where you go, we go. For the first time since they'd carried that away, a lump formed in my throat. Gratitude, vindication, power. Okay, I said quietly. Let me make some phone calls. The next Monday, 7:30 my phone flashed with a name I didn't anticipate. Paula McCormack. Regional manager, I picked up calmly. Good morning, Paula. Her voice was strained, clipped. We have to talk. I just got 7 resignation letters, all from your old team, effective today. There was silence between us, crackling with tension. Care. To explain, I drew out the pause, relishing it. I don't know what explanation you're looking for. I no longer work for Summit Edge. Her tone hardened. They're all leaving to go to Vertex. Where you've just joined as division director, this doesn't look coincidental. Individuals make career decisions for personal reasons, I stated suavely. You might want to ask Dan why you're high-performing. Team chose to stage a walkout. Paula's attitude changed, defeated, exhausted. It is regarding your dismissal, isn't it? I went over the file. Dan never asked me permission to fire you. I would not have signed off on it. My lips curled. That's between you and Dan, although I do ask. Why wasn't the regional manager consulted before a star team lead was discarded? A deep breath on the other end. Dan said it was a critical performance issue. I trusted his instincts. Apparently, that was a mistake. I remained silent, allowing the tension to stretch out until it became thick. Eventually, she snapped. Holly, I'm willing to give you back your job, with a 10% increase. And a public apology. We need you. And there I had her. Not only Dan, not only Summit Edge. The whole company at their knees. Paula's voice creaked on the phone, dry with desperation. The Wilson account is walking out on us. I'll pay you whatever Vertex is offering you plus 15%. I sat back in my chair, allowing her words to stand. It's not the money, Paula. If it's not the money, then what would it take? Her voice cracked now, like pressure on glass. I shut my eyes for a moment. The response was quick, crisp, irrefutable. Time travel. Back to when my dad died. Back to when Summit Edge might have taught me an ounce of mercy rather than punishing. Me for mourning. Silence, heavy, suffocating. I broke it first. I need to leave, Paula. Today I have my first day at Vertex, and I don't want to be late. Your non-compete, she attempted, fumbling. I cut her off, my tone even icy. Have your lawyers call mine. Maybe they'll care to read about the circumstances of my firing first. Click. Conversation ended. When I arrived at Vertex's lobby, Hank was already there, beaming like a man who'd just won the lottery. We're proceeding with all 7 of your ex-colleagues. Interviews begin on Wednesday. Gratitude welled in my chest. Thank you for allowing them a fair opportunity. Hank laughed. Fair opportunity? Holly, they're the best of the best. Summit Edge's error is our gain. 2 days later, another call, this time in a whisper, as if a secret. Barbara Kent from HR. Dan Weaver's been put on administrative leave. Paula's initiating a full review bereavement policy, leave management practice. The board is shaken. Losing your whole team set off alarms at the top. By Friday afternoon, all of my 7 had offers in hand from Vertex. We toasted that evening with clinking glasses and laughter that was as sweet as freedom. To new beginnings, Veronica said. To Holly, Jason said, who taught us what real leadership is all about. Weeks passed, and then the letter came. Summit Edge's official acknowledgement of wrongful discharge, coupled with an offer of settlement. I agreed. Not for the money, but for the vindication in black and white. They had been an error. Then came the nicest irony. The Wilson account, frustrated with Summit Edge's disarray, signed with us. Loyalty hadn't been to the company, it had been to the people who cared. 3 months on, I stood in the biggest conference room at Vertex, sharing figures that muffled. All skepticism, 30% division growth, 4 big client wins, 3 pilfered right out of Summit Edge's hands, 22% cost savings. Hank's smile was unadulterated pride. Exceptional work, Holly. You and your team have blown every expectation out of the water. I shook my head. It's not me. It's them. They're amazing. Later, my staff surprised me with cake. Jason referred to it as our Independence Day. I chuckled. But the fact was undeniable. They were flourishing. At last appreciated as human beings and not mere headcount. That same night, my phone vibrated with a news notification. Summit Edge announces restructuring amid mass client exodus. They'd lost Hernandez. 20% of their business lost. Dan had emptied his office. Paul was in a panic, but the empire was already in shambles. I clinked my glass against the table. To Summit Edge, may they finally learn a company is only as strong as how it treats its people. 6 months later, I sat across from Paula at a small riverside restaurant. She was lighter, chastened. I owe you an apology, she conceded. I wasn't the one who did it, but I helped create the situation that made it possible. She paused, then handed out the last surprise. Summit Edge is being taken over by Meridian Shipping. Pennies on the dollar. They only want the client base. And assets. I wasn't shocked. You can strip an outfit for parts, but you can't reclaim respect once it's lost. Anything about Dan? I asked, reclining in my chair. Paula scowled. Still out of work, from what I heard last. His standing, she paused, seeking the proper phraseology. Let's just say your tale has reached industry folklore. I hadn't publicized the specifics of my dismissal, but I hadn't hidden the facts either. When individuals inquired as to why I had quit Summit Edge, I responded with this simple truth. Number. Spin. No embarrassment. Facts only. Paula sighed, her tone softer now. I learned more from this debacle than from any business course I ever attended. Nowadays, I'm advising other businesses on how to avoid doing what I did. Her words lull in, the air honest and laden. And then she asked the one question that I had no doubt had been waiting on her lips since we'd sat down. Was it worth it, giving up quietly rather than fighting? I looked at my team flourishing, self-assured, at last, respected. I looked at the clients who had trailed behind us and how much better they were treated today. And I looked at my father, who had always taught me that strength was not found in how loudly you bellowed, but in how firm you remained when the tide battered at you. Yes, I said quietly. The outcome speaks more loudly than any courtroom ever has. A year after that cold email ended my Summit Edge career, I became Executive Vice President of Operations for the Northwest region at Vertex. My department wasn't merely profitable, it was the company's standard bearer for what leadership should be. All 7 of my original team members had also risen. Jason now led his own division. Veronica had transformed client relationships for the whole industry. All of them were finally rewarded for what Summit Edge had not wanted to see, their value. On the anniversary of my firing, a package was delivered to my front door. And it was my previous cactus, still green, still healthy, rescued by Barbara Kent from the abandoned desk where I had left it. With it was a note in her precise handwriting. Thought you might want this back. Summit Edge closes its doors next week. I put the cactus on my windowsill where light streamed through. Like me, it was discarded, but it survived. And now it thrived. That night, I drove to the Boise River, to the bank itself, where my father and I once fished. The current flowed calmly, bending around rocks that would not yield. I closed my eyes and breathed a secret into the current. You were right, Dad. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in hitting back. It's in holding strong and letting the river do the rest. My revenge hadn't been in defeating Summit Edge. My revenge had been in creating something better, a workplace where loss wasn't penalized, where individuals were valued more than numbers, where leadership meant elevating others, not knocking them down. And in that instant, I knew my father would have been proud.